students, welcome to Sunil's tutorial. I'm Sunil Milwani and today we'll be doing this chapter called as nervous coordination. Now, we had seen in the last lecture that the forebrain is made up of two parts. It is made up of cerebrum with a pair of olfactory lobes, and it is made up of diencephalon, which is made up of thalamus and hypothalamus. Here is your hypothalamus, right? And thalamus is going to be just above this. It's just below corpus callosum. Okay. Now let us see what does this particular part do, right? So the second part of the cerebrum is diencephalon. Right, which is also called as thalamin cephalon. So either it is called as diencephalon or thalamincephalon. Now what is diencephalon? It is a part of the forebrain made up of grey matter. Sorry, it is a part of the forebrain made up of grey matter. Fine. It is made up of two subparts. It is made up of two subparts: thalamus and hypothalamus. Fine. Now, what is thalamus? Thalamus is made up of two round masses within cerebral medulla just below the corpus callosum. Now here you can see that you have these two round masses here, one here and one here. These are those two round masses of thalamus. Okay, so I can say that thalamus is made up of thalamus is made of two round masses. Thalamus is made up of two round masses within cerebral medulla. Below corpus callosum. Fine. Now, there is an endocrine gland at the root of the thalamus. It's called as penile body. Penile body is a part of the endocrine gland. There is an endocrine gland at the roof of the thalamus. The roof is called as the epithalamus. The thalamus. Fine. It is vascular and is called as anterior choroid plusex. It is vascular and called anterior choroid plexus. Right? Now, diencephalon, we said that it has two ventricles. Remember when we said cerebrum has two ventricles, the first ventricle and second ventricle. Cerebrum has two cavities which were called as parasural, and these were also called as ventricle. The third ventricle, the third cavity, is in the diencephalon. So diencephalon as it is the third ventricle. The diencephalon has a third ventricle called diocele. Okay. Now, what are the functions of thalamus? I can say thalamus acts as a relay center for sensory and motor impulses. Thalamus acts as a relay center for sensory and motor impulses. From spinal cord to cerebrum. From spinal cord to cerebrum and vice versa. Fine. Next, the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is present above the pituitary gland in front of the thalamus. Hypothalamus is present above the pituitary gland in front of the thalamus. What is it made up of? It is made up of neurosecretory cells. It is made up of neurosecretory cells. Fine. Functions. The hypothalamus controls secretions of tropic hormones from anterior pituitary by secreting neurohormones. So in short, it controls the pituitary, secretions of pituitary. I can say that hypothalamus controls secretions of tropic hormones from anterior pituitary by secreting neurohormones. Fine. It controls autonomic nervous system such as regulation of body temperature, hunger, thirst, sleep, fatigue, emotions, satisfaction, anger, pleasure, fear. All this is controlled by hypothalamus, right? It controls autonomic nervous activities. Fine. So that was about the diencephalon. Fine. Next, let's move on to the midbrain. The next part you have, I told you, was the midbrain. Right? Now what is midbrain? It is the uppermost part of the brain stem. Right? It is the uppermost part of brain stem. Okay, it has a cavity called as the aqueduct of Sylvius or the iter. It has a cavity called the aqueduct of Sylvius, or it is also called as the iter. Right? Where does it lie? It lies between the cerebrum and pons varolii. So it lies between cerebrum and pons varolii. It lies between cerebrum and pons varolii. Fine. So here you can see this. I just showed you the figure first. Here's pons varolii, here's cerebrum, so it lies somewhere here. This is exactly right. Here is pons varolii, here is cerebrum. It lies between pons varolii and cerebrum. Fine, do we get this in clear? And what is it made up of? Here, as you can see, it is made up of 4 small rounded bodies of nerve cells and nerve fibers, which are called as corpora quadrigemini. Okay. Ventricle to the midbrain is the optic chiasma. I'll show you the optic chiasma also, guys. You have the optic chiasma. I'll show you a diagram of optic chiasma. Here in this diagram you can see the optic chiasma. Here is the optic chiasma. So this is ventricle to the midbrain. So ventricle to the midbrain, you have the optic chiasma. Then you have the infundibulum. I don't see this in any of these diagrams. Okay. And the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is given to you here. Right? So that's my ventral side of it, and on the dorsal side you can see that it is made up of these 4 round bodies of corpora quadrigemini. Fine. What is the function of the midbrain? The midbrain, a pair of superior lobes, the upper 2 lobes of the corpora quadrigemini are centers for visual reflexes. Okay. The inferior lobes are used for auditory reflexes. The red nucleus in the midbrain controls the muscle tone and the posture, right? And thus the corpora quadrigemina is concerned with hearing and visual reflexes. It also develops coordination between the forebrain and the hindbrain. Fine, do we get this thing clear? So do you understand where you have the midbrain, the dorsal side as well as the ventral side, right? Now, let's write this down. So, it lies between the cerebrum and pons varolii. It is made up of of It is made up of four small rounded bodies. Four small rounded bodies of nerve cells and nerve fibers. Called corpora quadrigemini. Right? These are also called as the optic lobes. I can say that the ventral to the midbrain are present optic chiasma. Then you have the infundibulum, right? So you have the optic chiasma, the infundibulum, and the pituitary gland. That's on the ventral side, right? Now, what does it do? What does the midbrain do? A pair of superior lobes of corpora quadrigemina are centers for visual reflexes. Right? Then a pair of inferior lobes of corpora quadrigemina are centers for auditory reflexes. Right? Then the red nucleus in the midbrain controls of the midbrain controls muscle tone and posture. Right? Next, thus I can say corpora quadrigemina is concerned with senses of hearing and visual reflexes. Right? It also develops coordination between fore and hindbrain. Coordination between fore and hindbrain. So that was your midbrain. Next, let's move on to the hindbrain. Right? The hindbrain. It is made up of three parts and the fourth ventricle. It is made up of three parts and the fourth ventricle. Right? Now the three parts are A. The cerebellum. B. Pons varolii. And C. Medulla oblongata. Right? Now, so the hindbrain is made up of pons varolii, medulla oblongata, and cerebellum. Right? Can we see this in the diagram, please? Here is the fourth ventricle. Right? He said that this is the fourth cavity. There are 4 cavities, out of which 2 are in the forebrain, or in the first 2 are in the cerebrum. The third is in the diencephalon, and this is the fourth, which is there in the hindbrain. So this is my fourth ventricle. It is made up of cerebellum. This is your cerebellum here. It is made up of pons varolii, and it is made up of medulla oblongata. So this whole part constitutes your hindbrain. Fine, do we get this in here? It's made up of cerebellum, it is made up of pons varolii, it is made up of medulla oblongata, and it is made up of the fourth ventricle. So these are the things that make your hindbrain. Fine? Okay, let's see each part of them. First, let's see cerebellum. Now, cerebellum, it is also called as the little brain, and it is situated dorsally. It is called little brain. It is situated dorsally. Right? Now, cerebellum has 2 equal lobes called the cerebellar hemispheres. It has 2 equal lobes called the cerebellar hemispheres, right, which are joined to each other by vermis. Okay, let's move on ahead. Now, it has an outer grey matter and inner white matter. It has outer grey matter and inner white matter. Fine. It resembles oyster shells with deep ridges. It resembles oyster shell with deep ridges. Fine. What does it do? It coordinates muscular movement during walking, running and swimming. It coordinates muscular movement. It coordinates muscular movement during walking, running and so on. Right? It helps in maintaining posture and balance of body. It helps in maintaining posture and balance of body. Fine, do we get this thing here? So this is my cerebellum. Next part was the pons varolii. Now what is pons varolii? It lies between between the midbrain and the medulla oblongata. It lies between midbrain and medulla oblongata. So that's my position of it. It is nothing but it is a band of nervous tissues which run across the medulla. It is a band of nervous tissues. It is a band of nervous tissues which run across medulla. Right? Now it has outer white matter and inner grey matter. It's the other way around, okay? It has outer white matter and inner grey matter. Right? It connects the hemispheres of the cerebellum and provides the space for motor fibers running across the cerebellum and cerebrum. So what does it do? It connects the hemispheres of cerebellum and provides space for motor fibers running across the cerebellum and cerebrum. Right? Now, what else does it do? Since it is connecting the hemispheres, it transmits impulses. That is, it acts as a relay center from the brain to the spinal cord and vice versa. It acts as a relay center from the brain to the spinal cord and vice versa. From the brain to spinal cord and vice versa. Right? What else does it do? It regulates your body heat and breathing rate. It regulates body heat and breathing rate. Fine? Do we get this thing here? Now, next, coming to the last part, the medulla oblongata. Now, where does it lie? The medulla oblongata forms the base of the brain stem and it encloses the fourth ventricle. Right? The medulla oblongata, it forms the base of the brain stem. It forms the base of the brain stem and encloses the fourth ventricle. Fine. It connects the brain and the spinal cord. It connects the brain and spinal cord. Fine. Now, it is short, cylindrical, 2.5 centimeters long and pyramidal shaped structure. It is short, cylindrical, 2.5 centimeters long and pyramidal shape structure. Structure. Right? That's my medulla oblongata. Many motor fibers cross over from cerebrum to spinal cord and vice versa through medulla. Right? Many motor impulses or motor fibers cross over from cerebrum to spinal cord and vice versa through medulla. Right? This crossing is called as decussation. Right? Now, why do I need to have medulla in the brain? It has the vital center for involuntary activities. It has vital centers for involuntary activities. Involuntary activities such as the cardiac center, the respiratory center, the reflex center. Right? Now, the vital activities such as heartbeat, respiration, the constriction and the dilation of blood vessels are all controlled by medulla oblongata. Right? So, it has vital centers for involuntary activities. Therefore, a little injury to medulla oblongata leads to sudden death. Right? It has a cardiac center which regulates and circulates regulates the circulation of heartbeat. It has cardiac center which regulates heartbeat. Then it has respiratory center which controls the lung functions. It has respiratory center which control lung functions. Right? Then it has vasomotor centers which control the constriction and dilation of blood vessels. It has the vasomotor centers to control constriction and dilation of blood vessels. Right? Then it has the reflex center which controls reflex action. It also controls digestion. Right? So these are the centers that are controlled by the medulla oblongata. Right? Now, let's come to that means all these three together combine together to form the brain stem. What is brain stem, guys? It is the posterior part of the brain which is made up of midbrain. It is made up of the midbrain, pons varolii and medulla oblongata. Right? I'll write this down, guys. Brain stem. stem. It is the posterior part of the brain. It is the posterior part of the brain and is composed of three parts. A. The midbrain. B. Pons varolii. And C. Medulla oblongata. Right? Now, the entire major part of the brains are placed in these three parts, and therefore collectively they are called as the brainstem. The brainstem has a network of nerve fibers which form reticular formation. Right? It has network of nerve fibers which form reticular formation. Right? These nerves run up and down the central nervous system. These nerves run up and down the nervous system. Right? The reticulate formation of the brainstem regulates awareness. Formation of brainstem regulates awareness. Right? Awareness as in it regulates the arousal of sleep through the stimulation of sensory areas on cerebrum, cerebrum by touch and sound. Fine, do we get this idea? So that's your brainstem. So those were the different parts of the brain, right? Okay, we'll stop this here for the day. Thank you very much.